Season 2 of Arcane, or the final season of Arcane as it's also known, is now streaming in its entirety on Netflix. This was released in separate installments over the last few weeks. Act 3 just premiered earlier this morning at 3 o'clock. I actually sat up to watch it because I was very excited to see how the story would conclude. And without further ado, we're going to get into it. But before we go any further, I do also want to mention there are going to be spoilers in this video. You have been warned. There are a lot of things that happen, especially as it hurtles towards the series finale. And so, without further ado, once again, let's get into it. Season 1 ends on a massive cliffhanger with Jinx firing upon Piltover, basically starting a war between Piltover and the underground city of Zaun. And it leads to a point of no return when it comes to these characters, and there are decisions that will probably have to be made now that are not going to be in the best interests of everybody, and maybe in the best interests of some. Up until now, Vi has believed that her younger sister, the one that she once knew, is still in there somewhere, but after what's happened, it seems like she might have to put her down once and for all, and so the two of them are in a deadlock scenario. And that's the basic gist of Season 2. It's building on the consequences and the actions that were, set up in Season 1 and seeing all of them to fruition and seeing how all of their arcs are now going to play out. Season 1, I would say, is lightning in a bottle when it comes to Netflix's catalog. I think it's one of the finest things on the service, and I think it's a wonderfully told story with gorgeous animation, some of the best I've seen in television. And naturally, I was very excited for Season 2 because, when you give Season 1 an A+, naturally you're thinking, well, what's Season 2 going to be like? But there was also a lot of talk regarding this being the final season because there is a lot of story over here. But they've made very clear this is not the ending of the entire franchise because there are clearly more shows that they want to work on. And there are going to be more of those down the line. And I'm excited to see what the future of this will be because League of Legends is a world that is ever expanding. Like, it doesn't just begin and end at Vi and Jinx. There's way more out there. And so I'm excited to see what the future holds. But as far as the arcs set up in Season 1 go, a lot of those are at their conclusion when it comes to this season. And right out the gate, once again, I will say that they have done an extraordinary job at animating these proceedings. This is a wonderful show, and my hat's off to the animators and the creators and everybody involved in bringing this to life. I mean, congratulations to them all because every single frame of this looks like a painting. There is so much color and vibrancy in every frame of Arcane, and the time between this season and Season 1, which is like 3 years, the work that has gone into realizing so much of that is on the screen. And once again, these characters are so well realized. And Season 1 set them up as they are. You're seeing how they're becoming who they are and, the paths that have led them to this moment. In Season 2, there are these second chances offered to them, and sometimes an opportunity to be more than what they're known as. And it can often lead to some very emotionally affecting and even heartbreaking situations. This especially comes through when it comes to Vi and Jinx because both of them are dealing with relationships in their lives now that they want to hold on to, but the tensions of everything around are resulting in issues in the process. For Vi, she is in love with Caitlyn. Eventually, the two of them do form a bond, and so Season 2 hones in on that quite a bit. And at the same time, Jinx has found a sisterly love with this little girl she's met named Isha, and the two of them eventually have a bond, which is something that Vi and Jinx never had. And so Jinx is getting this idea of getting to be a sister to somebody for once, and that's something that is very emotionally impactful. And to see the two of those storylines play out and to see with the work that's done over there is wonderful. And I think once again it leads to some fantastic voice performances from these two. I think Vi Haley Steinfeld is once again excellent. I think she brings this character to life beautifully, and I would say she does a better job here than she did even in Season 1. Like, there are things going on with Vi over here that I was a huge fan of, and I really liked how things proceeded. When it comes to Jinx, I think Ella Purnell is one of the best voice performances in the last 5 years in media, and that point stands even now. She is incredible as this character, and there's so many layers to her performance. Especially, it's like it's hard not to be, fascinated by Jinx as a character, even though she's not necessarily a good person. She's doing some pretty awful things. But I think that's the thing about season 2 that's so great, because when it comes to other characters too, like Jace and Victor, they're both making decisions that at the moment seem drastic, and they seem like they can cause a lot of damage, and they do. Like with the case of Jace, tampering with the Arcane has resulted in a temporal difference, and now he's ended up in this corrupted vortex of sorts, where he's realizing what the world is going to become if he doesn't stop what Victor now has, because Victor has been touched by the Arcane as well with Hextech, and he has gotten powers to essentially become Jesus of Zaun in a way. And so he's created this whole underground community that is sort of run by him, this almost utopic like thing, but it's very cult like, and it could cause a lot of problems, and eventually it leads to this glorious evolution that could be disastrous. And so the two of them are also at a crossroads in the process, and I think again the show handles that beautifully, because again it's a heartbreaking situation that the show realizes the stakes of, and it brings those into perspective in just the right ways, and eventually tying that into the plots when it comes to Vi and Jinx's storyline, especially as they are also at a bit of a head now, because it seems like a monster has been unleashed on Zaun, and that monster seems to be their lost father. It seems to be Vander. And so there is something incredibly sad about that too. It's like someone who they were barely able to say goodbye to, with this awful sense of necromancy from Singed, this, doctor who's working on, trying to bring his daughter back to life. Now he's come back, and it seems like he's not who he used to be, but there is still a part of Vander in him that could be redeemed. But unfortunately, this is a show that's not necessarily built on happy conclusions all the way through. Save for one. There is one happy ending in this entire series, and I'll talk more about that towards the end of the video. But beyond that, the desperation of certain things is very well realized. I want to talk about this girl really quick, this little girl Isha. She's such a great character. She doesn't have a single line of dialogue. She's mute, and so the entire series, whenever you're seeing her in there, she's basically just communicating through her eyes, and it's such a beautifully realized character. I felt so much for this little girl and the connection that she forms with Jinx as it goes on. You can feel like Jinx starting to change her ways in the process, because she thinks everything is about this sense of chaos that she's created now, and this is the line to go down. But as events are proceeding, she realizes, no, I think I care for this kid. I really want to be a better person for her and not be who everybody knows me as. And there is a sense of humanity that's found in the process that Vi also is able to pick up on, and they get to have a moment where they could live out a world where none of the bad stuff happens. But eventually, when Jace comes out of his temporal difference and he attacks and he kills Victor in an act that seems at the moment very, very sudden and makes you hate the character, it also causes a situation where, in order to let the other characters live, Isha sacrifices herself. It's hard not to feel a lump in your throat when that happens. It's a very heartbreaking sequence, and it's just one of those things that is done perfectly, as well as it could have. That what could have been aspect is also something that really drives season 2. When you look at the other characters, especially when it comes to Echo, who has ended up in a world where Jinx doesn't happen. Powder remains Powder. The two of them have a relationship. Vi, unfortunately, is the one who dies, and someone who is not in this world, but everybody else got to live. Everyone got to have a very good day in the sun. And there is something genuinely beautiful about how that arc is handled, and I was incredibly taken with some of that. And it's incredibly sad also at the same time, because that this is not, the sacred timeline, if you will. Like, in the actual sequence of events, horrible things are about to happen, but there is a future where some things can work out. But it also is built on this idea that there is no happy ending when it comes to the sisters, because in that perfect utopia where powder remains powder, Vi is dead. In this world, it seems like one of those sisters isn't gonna make it either, and very strongly the show hints throughout it's gonna be Jinx. And eventually, as the series is heading towards its conclusion and Victor has taken his glorious evolution to the degree that is going to corrupt all of Piltover and destroy its entire foundation, eventually what happens is that Jinx ends up sacrificing herself for Vi. And it's a heartbreaking, again, I say heartbreaking a lot because it is that situation, conclusion to that arc. And you have to, you can't help but feel awful for Vi in that situation because that's something that she's wanted. But in that final moment, it was Powder. It was her younger sister coming in to make sure that Vi got to see all of this to the end. Though there is that one tiny little moment towards the end where Caitlyn is looking at this design of vents and she seems to smirk to herself. So there's a likely scenario that Jinx probably got out. Someone mentioned, I think also, is like if you look carefully at the explosion that happens, you can see this shimmer that's going across. I don't know, maybe Jinx pulled a Dark Knight Rises, and is still alive out there. Even the show's ending, the actual thing, it ends with that, title screen, like a Jinx like graphic effect. So maybe she's still out there. Who knows? I mean, that would be a nice ending, to just a hopeful one to wrap up on, because you never know. I mean, she's still alive in the games, and they have said this is canon, so there is that. And I said there was one happy conclusion, and that is Vi and Caitlyn, they end up being a couple. That's something that a lot of fans wanted. That's the one thing that they decided to see through the ending. It's like, you guys get to stay together. Caitlyn is such a great character too. They realized her so well, and I think they did a fantastic job with her. There's a little detour at one point with this other officer, Maddie, who they set up. Eventually, she becomes this very disliked character, and she dies as a disliked character too. So good on that, I guess. Mel's storyline is very interesting because I feel like we're not done. I think there are things going on with her that are going to continue to some degree going forward, especially when it comes to the Black Rose and this idea of, what she can do, the powers that she can harness. I don't think we're fully done there. I think there's much more to explore. Mel's storyline, especially when it collides with her mother Mbessa, who wants to take on the idea of just magic, Black Rose, Arcane, all of it, someone who doesn't understand all of this and wants it all to go. Eventually her leading that invasion along with Victor into Piltover. It's also an arc which, I see where they're coming from, and then eventually that ends in the way that you would expect it to. I mean, she does not get to see this storyline to the ending, but she's a very menacing character, and they pulled her off very well too. She's not necessarily my favorite character in this entire series, because also, she's a villain who is also operating on the sides. I mean, season 1 mostly focused around Silco, season 2 is around, Jinx and Singed, and then of course it's Mbessa, who is the ultimate villain in all of this. But they did a really good job again of balancing all of those in the best ways possible. I have a feeling some characters are going to continue forward. You're going to see a lot more with them. I highly doubt this is the last you've seen of Vi and Kate. I'm sure there's going to be way more with them. I don't know about Jace and Victor. I think I'll leave that up to whatever they want to do, but their conclusion is also one that is built on the idea of embracing imperfection. Something that is a theme across this entire series, which is the idea that striving for perfection is wrong. It's like there is no such thing as perfection, because perfection often brings about another problem, and that there is beauty to be found, and there is happiness in the fact that sometimes what you are is what defines you, not what you want to be. And that's something, again, that as the glorious evolution is starting to cause as many problems as it is, and Echo is trying his best to time stop that thing in the most extreme ways possible, and succeeding at it, which is, making him the MVP of the series finale in a way, is really well realized, and I think they did a wonderful job with that. And at the end of the day, I think when it comes to Arcane Season 2, it pulled off everything that it needed to. I heard some comments say that it was a bit rushed at times. I didn't feel like it was rushed. Like, I feel like at the end of the day, the plot lines that it needed to hone in on and the things that it needed to pull off in the best ways imaginable, it did. It's a very quick conclusion, but it's also a conclusion that they set up very much in advance. Like, you knew how this was going to end, especially when it came to Jinx. And so I think at the end of the day, this was another really, really great second season run, and one that I'm extremely happy with. And I think especially after Act 3, I can honestly say that Arcane cements itself as one of the best shows that I've seen. I said this on, I think, Twitter or something, like, if they nail the finale, I will call this one of the best shows of all time. And I'm a man of my word. I will call it that, because I think Season 2 is incredible. And it also deserves, in my book, an A+. I'm in love with this show. I really am. I haven't bought Season 1 on disc yet. I will. I will buy Season 2 as well, because some really great work is happening over here. I loved every minute of it. I loved it all. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. And I'll see you guys... Wait, sorry, not at the movies. And I'll see you guys at the TV screens. Come on. Sometimes you can't snap. There we go.